What's poppin' gamers? It's your girl Pippa here, back with a quick discussion video about UVS and the upcoming Tekken 8 set, and why I just don't like the design of it. Uh, as a designer, I'm always looking at not only the power level of cards, but how the mechanics are implemented, and I just feel like Tekken 8 has some really bad vibes when it comes to design. I do want to note this isn't me trying to be mean. This is me just trying to discuss what I think is going wrong in terms of the Tekken 8 set and why it isn't really resonating with the community. With that, there are four main topics I wanted to touch on, being the parasitic mechanics and the heat token mechanic, the redundant cards in an attuned world, the power level and splashability of the set, as well as the mental load and introduction of mechanics. Uh, with that, what is a parasitic mechanic? Parasitic mechanics are mechanics or effects that work only with themselves or with the specific subset of cards. They aren't inherently bad, but they can be warping when introduced within a wider metagame, especially if you are introducing, for example, a set where this is the primary mechanic of it. They can take a variety of forms, and there are two primary types, being hard and soft parasitism. Hard are cards that have a strict requirement or work with other cards in a very strict way, whereas soft parasitism, they are cards that function without the synergies but are enabled by them. We have cards like Around the World specifically shouting out Walk the Dog in itself, a highly parasitic card. It only works with quote unquote two cards, and one of the enhances is only available to like four characters. We have Flock, who only works with one specific card type. On the other hand, we have cards that are softly parasitic, cards like Destructive Heat Ray. You don't need to go all in on a power token strategy for Destructive Heat Ray to function. It works by itself, but it does get better if you have those other power token generators. We also have cards like Peacemaker Knuckle or Ambush Tackle, where they function with a specific mechanic or with specific characters, but they also work by themselves, right? They're just enabled by these other synergies. We also have cards that aren't parasitic at all, cards like Optimal Form, like Ice Sword Execution, that just always work and don't rely on anything else in order to function. With that, I wanted to talk about the design of heat and how it relates to the rest of the set. The heat token itself isn't parasitic, it's just a token that gives you some chip damage if your moves are full blocked. It's unique and it goes away at the end of the turn. The issue with it is how the design of the heat token related cards work. Many of the cards are purely function. They say, if you have a heat token in your stage, do X. If not, kinda sucks. There are very few cards that function by themselves and are enabled further by heat. Cards like Russian Sickle, right? This shifts heat from being a mechanic where your deck is functional without it, but better with it, to a mechanic where your deck requires it in order to be able to work, right? With Tekken 8 being the only set with heat now and going forward, unless we get a Tekken 8 2, this warps the mechanic and all of the associated cards into a package deal, right? You need to run a high enough density of the enablers in order for your deck to function, and that kind of cannibalizes your deck. It takes away card slots from cards that make your deck function at a baseline level. The biggest draw of running heat is to enable the powerful payoff cards. Cards like Meteor Raid, cards like Following Orders, these really powerful game warping effects that heat enables. But the issue is that it requires a baseline level of heat token generators, but you also need to run enough payoffs for all those generators in order to really function truly. This makes heat only really engaging if you want to run a whole deck focused on the heat mechanic, and it's kind of useless otherwise. You're not going to see a random heat card in a deck like Rodon or Deku or Reiner, right? Uh, Not only is that a issue in terms of wanting to construct a deck, but because the heat token is unique and it goes away at the end of the turn, it requires constant input from the player in order to make their deck function at a base level. This turns into a cycle of needing to generate heat in order for your deck to work, but too many generators clogging up your deck. This ends up with the problem of drawing the wrong half of your deck at the wrong time. Sometimes you'll draw into a hand of 3 enablers and no payoffs. Sometimes you'll draw into a hand of all payoffs and no enablers. And that doesn't really work in terms of UVS as a game. During all of this as well, the rest of your deck is just kind of burdened with trying to enable the mechanic. You're running all of these heat token generators and payoffs, but that doesn't leave a lot of room in order for the baseline effects of being able to draw cards, to survive, to play cards, right? A lot of the heat token generators only do that, so they don't have any additional utility outside of that. If you draw into 5 heat token generators, you have heat tokens for the rest of the game, but it doesn't really do anything else. Moving on, I wanted to talk about pack filler. Because they wanted to make sure you always have ways to generate heat, they have filled the set to the absolute brim with functionally identical cards, right? It fluffs the number of the set. It would be... It's very... The cards are functionally similar except for these symbols, of which there are 14 of these flip remove 10 from your discard pile, add a heat token to your stage. They could have cut down that number by introducing one version for each attuned symbol. That would have done it. They could have made an infinity one. They could have done a lot of things in order to do it, but they chose to instead fill the set with a wide variety of functionally the same card. This really homogenizes the set, and it reduces the quote-unquote number of cards within the set. I also wanted to mention that while Attuned is in the set, all of the Attuned cards are free agents, and they don't really have any connection to the rest of the set. If you look, all of the Attuned cards just kind of do weird things, or do things unrelated to heat. It really divides the set into 2 distinct halves, where you have all the main symbol cards that focus on heat, and all of the attuned cards that don't really have any relation to that other half. Now I wanted to discuss the power level. So UVS is a highly competitive game. This is a card gamer's card game. There aren't a lot of casual UVS players, right? So every card reveal is met with, is this card good? Is it bad? Will it see play? And while every set will have good and bad cards, the ways that cards are good and bad matter, right? For example, the Heat Smashes, they're really cool. I love the Heat Smashes. It's these really powerful cards. They found a new cost to add them other than adjusting the check-in difficulty, and it lets you play these really powerful effects by jumping through a small hoop. But because you have to engage with the heat mechanic in order to do that, that warps the rest of your deck, and therefore makes it to where the Heat Smash cards are, while good, don't really slot into any decks unless you're playing directly into the gimmick. The design of the set is overall really limiting. A lot of the effects are gated behind achieving a condition, and the set just feels very swingy. If you've met the activation condition for a lot of the cards, things are already going well. And there are very few cards that simply do the thing, right? With that, I wanted to talk about splashability. Splashability is the concept of how often cards will see play and are included in a variety of decks. A wise man once said, a 1-star card isn't necessarily bad, it just doesn't see play, right? And so there can be good cards that are 1-star because they don't see any play. There can be bad cards that are 5-star just because they slot in really well in certain decks, in a wide variety of decks. With that, cards can usually be divided into two groups when deck building, being either stable or game plan cards. Stable cards are kind of like the foundation of your deck. They make your deck function. These are your defensive tools. These are your draw power tools. These are cards that don't necessarily synergize with the rest of your deck, but make sure that your deck functions at a baseline level. Whereas game plan cards are often the build arounds. They are the how my deck wins the game, or what does my deck plan to do. And they really inform the construction of your deck. And generally, the best cards of any set are the stable cards, given their general usability. But that doesn't mean game plan cards can't also be quote unquote great. We have cards like City Rampage and Magic Trap that ask you to play specific cards or card types. We have Tyrant Rave that asks the question of how do you pass this big 7-diff move at the end of your string. We have, on the other end of the spectrum, generally splashable cards like Finally Free that generate a powerful resource, or Armorclad Faith that have unmatched utility, or Queen of the Monsters, which is just always good, right? There are also cards in the middle, cards like Superfly Stomp, where you can include it in any evil deck, but you really want to include it in a deck where you maximize the most powerful part of the card, which is being able to tutor your deck for a card and discard it. You can run Blasting Off in any deck on Simple, but you really want to be able to answer the question of how do I get momentum to enable these powerful keywords in order to draw cards off of this. And so, moving on, Tekken 8 is pretty narrow, with all of the cards being primarily game plan centric, with very few broadly appealing cards. There aren't very many stable cards in this set. They're almost all game plan cards. While there isn't a bad thing, there's very little reason to pay attention to the set if you're not playing one of the decks that specifically wants some of these game plan cards. Another trend is that a lot of the cards are overcosted. There are cards that fail to meet a baseline power level of being able to see play. I wanted to mention a concept of the power budget, where cards are only allowed to be so powerful, whether it be through the stats or the effects of the card. And in total, a lot of the UR attacks have the flavor text of the -1 difficulty at 5 or less health. And it's been factored into a lot of the power budgets of the URs, even though that's mostly useless. The number of times you'll be at less than 5 health and then being able to play these and have it matter is going to be very low. And yet cards like Sky Burial, cards like Coupe de Chevalier, these are overcosted, underpowered, understated, or just frankly not good cards. Sky Burial specifically I want to shout out because it's a 5-diff 4-high-4 that doesn't even plus you, that also has a condition to sometimes ignore progressive if you're playing into the gimmick. But even as a 4-diff, it wouldn't really see a ton of play as a 4-high-4 that doesn't even plus you, that just trades even in card advantage and sometimes has an upside. I also wanted to discuss effect consistency. Sometimes you have cards that are just really good and you need to tap them down. And so one way to do that is to add some inconsistency by limiting the effect to a specific trigger. This is known as gating cards. And many of the Tekken 8 cards are really gated, with their effects being locked behind either a heat token requirement or often dealing damage in some form, such as being unblocked. Radiant Pegasus Bomb specifically says, hey, if your attack isn't completely blocked. A lot of cards have that. If you just scroll through the set, look at how many cards in the set have the if in their text. If this attack is not completely blocked. if this attack deals damage. It means that while most of the effects, in order for them to activate, you already have to kind of be in a good position within the game. These are win more cards, cards that don't function well if you're losing, which is getting your attacks blocked, which is what decks are trying to do. The primary interaction of the game is blocking your rival's offense and trying to get your own through, and not being able to have effects that work generally really gates these cards in a very swingy way, effects that will only really activate if things are already going well for you. This leads to cards and the set as a whole feeling very inconsistent. When UVS as a game really values consistency, you only really want to run cards if you always know what it's going to do. These two cards on the right, Zeus Unlimited and White Angel of Death, are probably the most consistent cards of the set. Very few just do the thing. I also wanted to take a quick tangent on mental load. Mental load, for those unaware, is a concept that during any sort of activity, the human brain can only track so many pieces of information. And it is a concept that UVS really struggles with. Stages can get wide. You have a bunch of cards in your hand every turn. You have the cards in your card pool. And multiply this by 2 players. You can have cards that just have, or game states that just represent way too many effects for people to reasonably keep track of. Of course, this has been an issue, and UVS has tried to solve it by either having simplified abilities or reducing the number of abilities on cards. And I did want to mention that it's specifically for tracking face-up game pieces. Additional mechanics added to the game don't increase the mental load of the game. If you have a power token on your stage, that does increase the mental load, but the power token as a mechanic existing doesn't, because you're not thinking about that during the game if it's not a part of it. I wanted to specifically mention the Roman cancel token. It is probably the most egregious mechanic in terms of adding mental load. It adds another zone you have to track. It has 4 different effects with varying activation conditions, and it just is, it adds more text to an already cluttered board state. And I just wanted to mention that UVS is hard, and mechanics and the addition of mechanics don't naturally increase the mental load of a game state that they don't affect. With that, UVS has recently taken a very aggressive stance on implementing new mechanics. We've gotten our 2nd card type in as many years with arenas. We have our 3rd token entering the game. And broadly, the community has largely reacted negatively, though this has settled down for the most part as people have gotten used to the introduction of mechanics. And of course, there's always a delay between releases and feedback that can be garnered, and then adjusting for that feedback for future releases. And I just wanted to mention that as a designer, being able to have tokens in the game is probably the most impactful shift in design philosophy for this game ever. The amount of design space that tokens or additional card types add to the game makes designing, it opens up a whole new dimension for the game in terms of what the designers can do and how they can interact with the game and help the players interact with the game. The biggest issue, though, is that a lot of these mechanics are not reusable because we're an IP-based game. A lot of the mechanics basically have one set of support, ignoring going into the far future. Again, like, we won't have another heat token set unless we get Tekken 8-2. I also wanted to mention that it feels like some of the mechanics have been thrown to the wayside. We got backups in AOT, which were absolutely massive. But with the recent releases, it feels like they've really fallen to the wayside. We got fighter jets and combat submarine in Godzilla, and those feel like they weren't even intended to be backups. We got one backup so far in Tekken 8. Maybe there will be more, but I doubt it. And it just feels like they are introducing mechanics that eventually they have to stay away from, and that really isn't very fun. You want to introduce mechanics that you can constantly reuse. Frenzy and Ruin are great examples of this, where you can use those, they're IP agnostic, and you're able to keep using them going into further sets. Now, what about the Tekken 8 mechanics? Heat, pretty simple. The issue, in my eyes, are the arenas. They are a new card type, and are kind of a mess. I think the concept of arenas are really cool. I think that Tekken as a game is the arenas really change how you interact with the game within the actual video game of Tekken 8. And I think it's awesome that they brought this sort of mechanic into the game. I just don't think about I don't think the implementation of it necessarily was the best. I think shared game zones are always kind of icky. I don't like other people touching my cards, and I know a lot of people feel the same way. I also wanted to mention that the rage art mechanic with the -1 difficulty of 5 or less, I wonder why they couldn't have keyworded that. They've shown that they are willing to introduce keyword specific abilities to cards in the past, such as elusive for the backups in TMNT. So I'm not sure why they couldn't have keyworded this as rage, and made all of the ultra rares have that keyword, and then we could theoretically use the rage mechanic going into the future. I also wanted to mention there's a big disconnect between the characters and the mechanics of the set. The set is all about heat tokens and doing your heat smashes and having these powerful cards enabled by heat, and none of the characters play with that. I think that's good. I think that being able to have widely applicable characters is really awesome and not locking them to a single set's mechanic. But it really makes the set feel disjointed between the characters not really wanting to do any of the heat mechanic things, the heat mechanic being warping, and then the attuned cards also being not really applicable to a lot of the rest of the set. It really makes the set feel like there are almost three different parts of it, with the characters being one part, the heat tokens and heat smashes and heat related cards being another part, and then the attuned cards being another set. It all just feels very disconnected. I also wanted to shout out the return of the bracket discard pile bracket effect. I really don't like it. UVS already has the mental load problem of tracking all the cards in your stage and your rival's stage. You get a fresh hand every turn, and now you have to track another game zone. Sweeping daggers, one of the biggest issues that I don't feel like enough people discussed with that card is just the play patterns it made. The constant checking of, hey, can I check your discard pile? Oh, let me look in my discard pile. Oh, what's going on? Adding another game zone to track in an already complicated game is just not very good in terms of introducing new people, and it's going to lead to a lot of problems with people unintentionally or even possibly intentionally sharking the people. Hey, do you have a twist reality in the Discord? I don't know, let me check. And having to do that every single turn. Sometimes you'll have cards that you'll check and you normally wouldn't have to pay attention to, but now you do because they have introduced this new game zone where effects can trigger. Taking effects from the discard pile is also very dangerous in terms of imposing an additional mental burden on players. And then I also wanted to make a tangent on power creep. Power creep is a concept in design where, as games exist, The new game pieces that come out must be stronger and gradually get more powerful in order to see play. At the end of the day, the goal of a card game company is to sell cards, and powerful cards sell. And UVS is inconsistent at best when it comes to how they design power level. We went from AOT 3, which was widely regarded as a pretty good set, to TMNT, which was not, to Guilty Gear, which had ups and downs. We had Reign of Kaiju, which was a fantastic set, and Tekken 8, which for the most part has been met with pretty mediocre reactions at best. I also wanted to mention this concept that printing bad cards is to reduce the power level of the game, but that's not how it works. Printing bad cards doesn't reduce the power level of a game. It just prints cards that don't see play. And then if you are trying to really reduce the power level of the game, you print quote unquote bad sets with a lower power level. But because of rotation and the slow amount of time that it works, it'll be years before the reverse power creep can catch up and truly power down the game, making it just not really feasible. I also wanted to mention that UVS has always been able to print playable cards at lower rarities, or at least interesting cards. Here I have a selection of cards from the 6 most recent sets that are all commons or uncommons that are just really cool and see play. We have Horseback Charge, Weapon at the Ready. We have build-arounds like Hang Ten. We have defensive pieces like Protector of Life. We have cool offensive cards like Stroke the Big Tree or Battle Preparations. UVS Games is capable of printing powerful or playable cards at lower rarities, but for some reason they just don't want to. And now I've been ranting a lot, but I did want to talk about some of the cool parts of Tekken 8. Because the set is not all bad, and I wanted to end with some positivity. I did want to really say that the character design of the set is awesome. All of the characters are really cool. They do unique things. Yoshimitsu specifically is something that I never expected them to actually put on a character, and it's a welcome surprise that they actually did. We have arenas, like, again, great concept, unsure about the implementation, but I think that they have a lot of really interesting design space going into the future. I think that being able to experiment with different costs for attacks is really cool. Cards like Ultimo Jaguar that are really powerful cards but require a different quote-unquote downside in order to play them. I also want to mention that the secret rares, they keep nailing the design of the secret rares. They're niche, they're powerful, they're exciting. And I also wanted to say that they're willing to take risks. Cards like Electric Wind Godfist and Channel Chaos are really cool and wouldn't have seen print a few years ago, but I'm glad that they're willing to take risks and print these cards and see what they can get away with. And I think that while the direction of Tekken is bad, the overall design direction of the last few sets has shown that they're willing to go to different sorts of avenues in order to see what works. I think the tension mechanic with Guilty Gear is a great example of a risk that they took that worked out phenomenally. And with that, that'll be the end of it. If you have any comments, feel free to leave them. I'll be chatting around, and hope you have a great day.